Hello and welcome. In today's video I'm going to go over the brand new survival missions added to GTA Online and tell you guys some of the best spots I have learned, as well as the strategies and some tips and tricks thrown in there. So let's jump in. Okay, first off, if you own one, I highly recommend using it, and it's the thermal vision. This is going to help you out massively during those highly spawning enemies at later waves. To equip the thermal goggles, go to your accessories and down to helmets up until you find the right one, and then press space. This will put you into thermal vision. Now, you don't have to use this if you don't want to, however it's going to help you out massively if you're struggling in later rounds to find enemies. So yeah, that's just a nice little tip right there. Okay, once the round starts, get yourself racked up on armor which spawns around the map, if your teammate doesn't steal it of course. This is also very useful for those later rounds, as when you're very low you can use the remaining health packs and armor that are around. That's why I recommend you save as much of your armor and health during those first 3 waves, then you can start to rack up on later rounds. Okay, the more rounds go on, the more enemies spawn of course, so things can get a little bit heated. That's why you really have to rely on teammates when it comes to these game modes. For this map right here that I'm playing on, what I recommend, if running it with teammates of course, to give you an upper hand, one person covers the top side like me, and others cover the downside. From where I am covering, the enemies spawn from each side of this barrier and behind you. That's why you gotta rely on teammates to cover the backside. They also spawn to the left and right of this road. It's pretty straightforward. If they come from both sides of the barrier, pick them off very easily. For these game mods, I highly recommend using the Mark II LMG, as it absolutely shreds through enemies very easily. Now keep an eye out for either side of the alleyways where more enemies can spawn. Again, working with your team, easily weave in and out, picking them off. And finally, for this map, when the support chopper arrives, go under these like canopy areas for better protection. And with these tips, this map isn't that bad. However, you can easily get picked off from either sides of the alleys and the road entrances. However, you can easily last up to those high rounds if you use these tips. For the next map, this is a huge vantage point that gives you coverage of every spawn angle and is probably the best way to get higher rounds very easily. I use this a lot and it got me pretty far with it. Okay, once you spawn in, again, rack up on armor and health if needed, and over here, climb on top of this left truck trailer. Once you're on here, it may seem like you're out in the open, but like shown in this footage, you have an angle on every enemy that spawns. From the main spawn down on La Mesa Road over here, you can easily pick them off, and to your left and right where they spawn in, you have the high vantage point as well as the trailer and containers in front of you to block enemies' shots, meaning they will have to come towards you and you can pick them off very easily. This spot is highly OP. Okay, now be careful of the alley to your left as enemies rush through there. However, the second trailer is blocking your view to that alley. So to kill these enemies, simply wait for them to run around for the peak and then pick them off. After each wave, if you're running low, simply jump down and rack up on health and armor and then climb back up. It's that easy. This is by far my favourite spot on this map. Let me know if there is other spots down below. This map has great coverage to each spawn and well protected, though it may not seem like that way. For the next map, I didn't really find much of a working strat. However, this is mainly down to teamwork of a full 4-player team. 2 people cover the left side down near the alley where and cross the road where most spawns are, whereas like me, I covered the right side, giving me an angle on pretty much every spawn, from across the street like shown down that alley, and again across the street over the boundary where again most enemies spawn, as well as the path down. If you come out, you can get an angle on the enemies that come through down that alleyway. Now be careful behind you, because this spawn caught me off guard quite a bit. In between this fence there is a wave of enemies that spawn, and if you roll and weave you can easily pick them off. Just be aware of that. As well as behind you, they can come in through the alley in between the fence. So again, make sure to rack up on armor and health, as well as have a buddy on standby to help out. Now for the Underpass map, I struggled to find the right spot. However, one spot I discovered was perfect. If you climb on top of this container like I do, and for this one I highly recommend toggling your thermal vision like we mentioned at the start, so you can get a reach of all the enemies. Now why is this an awesome spot? Well, as you can clearly see in the footage, I have a full angle on each spawn at the top, from the gap near the shoe shop and from down near the road, whereas my team and are covering the other side. It's honestly a perfect vantage. However, be very careful. Make sure to rack up on armor when you're done. Again, jump down and get the things you need. then climb back up. If you feel you're going to die, you can always jump off, because the downside of this spot is the fact that you are very out in the open, so be careful of that. Okay, finally, this has to be one of the best spots discovered. I tuned into one of Gilly Master's live streams and saw him using this spot, so I thought I'd test it out, and oh boy, this is a hell of an OP spot. To get here, head on over to these containers, climb onto this one, and to get into the small gap behind the crate, it took me some time, but just get the right angle and keep trying to get into cover, and soon you should end up somewhere like this. This is by far the best spot. You have full cover all around, and if people are pushing you from the right, you can easily nudge up a little bit and you will be hidden. You have full coverage of every spawn, especially the main entrance down here. As you can see, you can blind fire or shoot up, which I recommend because blind fire may not work here and there, and you can easily pick enemies off that try to come in this way. And again, a spot you probably didn't think you could reach is if you aim up over here next to the factory area, you get a huge head aim advantage and can easily pick enemies off that come that way before they push up. It's honestly amazing. Now for the enemies that come through the warehouses to your right, you don't have a reach of them. It's best to rather wait for them to pop out and you can shoot them. However, they do take a while to do so. I'm not too sure why. Maybe it's a bug where they just stay there. Or the alternative option, plus the best way, is just to get your teammates to cover that spot. And with that, that has to be the best spot for sure. Anyway guys, I hope this helped. I hope this sort of gave you guys some idea of some new tips for these new maps. I know I didn't cover all 7, I only really wanted to cover the ones that I found the most good in my opinion. Not that the other ones weren't good, it's just that I wasn't really a big fan of them. However, there is a very good strats for certain other maps, I just didn't decide to include them into this video. You can check out my live stream from the other day where I tested out a few maps. However, these tips may help you out. If they did, subscribe, like the video, and yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you all later.